Welcome to Freedom Matters, keeping an eye on the erosion of civil liberties and the rise of fascist tendencies within American government. My name is Daniel Payne. Today I'd like to briefly talk about Trump's cabinet picks, or some of Trump's cabinet picks. While I do not think that Trump himself is a fascist, I do certainly think he's a narcissist and a demagogue, and he seems to be surrounding himself with people who in the past have shown fascist tendencies, people from the so-called alt-right, otherwise known as racist and xenophobic. I'd like to speak about a few of these people that he's chosen to be on his cabinet today. And towards the end of the program, why these picks seem to be happening without much outcry from even the Republican groups within Congress and grassroots Republicans. So the first person I'd like to talk about is Rex Tillerson, choice for Secretary of State. Rex has a long history of ties with Russia and ties with Putin. In 2011, he made an agreement with Russia for oil drilling. In 2013, he received the award, the Order of Friendship Award from Putin. In 2015, documents were discovered showing that Tillerson was director of a joint U.S.-Russia oil company. All this calls into question Trump's America First policy. It doesn't seem, at least in the mind of Rex Tillerson, that America comes first. It seems like Russia comes first, money comes first. Very odd Secretary of State choice to have such ties with Russia. Odd, I suppose, until you consider Trump's praise of Russia and of Putin. Steve Mnuchin, the Secretary of Treasury choice, also another odd choice, even considering Trump's statements during the campaign against Hillary Clinton in her speeches for Goldman Sachs. Stephen Mnuchin was former Goldman Sachs partner for 17 years. He worked for Goldman Sachs. After that, he was a hedge fund investor. He profited off of home foreclosures during and after the financial crisis. So definitely an insider choice, not the draining of the so-called swamp that Trump promised. Then we have Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General pick. It's very funny, historical revisionism that happens or is happening within the Republican Party, especially among some of these picks that have a long history of racism and xenophobia, misogyny. Jeff Sessions is one of those. He wants to reduce even legal immigration. I'm not talking about illegal immigration. He wants to reduce the number of legal immigrants that can come into this country. He supported a national amendment to ban same-sex marriages, opposed the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, has a 0 rating from the Human Rights Commission. He voted against the Matthew Shepard Act, which criminalizes hate crimes. He voted against Stem Cell Research Enhancement Act of 2007, research that could promise cures to many diseases. He's skeptical of climate change, and he wants to open the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil drilling. But he co-sponsored the bill to award Rosa Parks the Congressional Gold Medal, so he must be okay, right? He must support civil rights and must have for a very long time. Well, no, that's certainly not the case, as we can see with his voting history. He has constantly been opposed to civil rights for LGBTQ people, for immigrants, for people of color. Very, very dangerous pick for Attorney General, and a pick that could turn back the clock half a century. The Secretary of Labor choice, Andrew Puzder, excuse me. Um, he has a history of sexism in particular and misogyny. One of the Carl Jr.'s ads showed a woman, a bikini-clad woman, eating a hamburger, and there was some outcry about this advertisement. In response to that outcry, Andrew Puzder said in an interview, "I like our ads. I like beautiful women eating burgers in bikinis. I think it's very American." Aside from his misogyny and sexism, obviously, there's also a problem with his grammar. It should be, "I like beautiful women in bikinis eating burgers," not beautiful women eating burgers in bikinis. The burgers are not in bikinis. So, aside from some problems with English grammar, we have a Secretary of Labor who has shown his sexist tendencies in the past. The Secretary of Health and Human Services pick is Tom Price, another dangerous pick in my opinion. He is a member of the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. Their stated aim is to fight socialized medicine and the government takeover of medicine. And more dangerously, I think, he voted for H.R. 358. This is a bill that would allow pregnant women to die if their doctors did not want to perform abortions. It gives doctors and hospitals the right not to perform abortions if it goes against their conscience, even if the life of the mother is in danger. Very dangerous. One of the more odd picks to me seems to be Ben Carson, the pick for Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. There's really too much to say about Ben. Too little to say about his experience in running the Department of Housing and Urban Development, but too much to say as far as his strangeness. He just a few things. He compares women who have abortions to historical slave owners. He rejects that their human activity is part of the reason for climate change. He rejects evolution completely. He supported abolishing Medicare and Medicaid during the campaign. One of his more strange beliefs, if you can compare the strangeness of his beliefs, he believes pyramids of Giza were built by the biblical character Joseph to store grain. Of course, he's opposed to equal marriage, but most importantly, I think he has absolutely no experience with housing and urban development. So I don't know what to expect over the next hopefully not 8 years from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, but I can only hope that he surrounds himself with people that know what they're doing. We're getting increasingly odd here in the picks. Rick Perry for Secretary of Energy, not related to the Department of Energy, but he believes in the inerrancy of the Bible. If you don't know what an inerrancy is, it means that he believes that the Bible is completely perfect and without error. He has said that he believes that people who don't accept Jesus as their Savior will go to hell for eternity. As governor of Texas, he supported the anti-sodomy law, which the Supreme Court found unconstitutional. Also, as governor, he supported the execution of mentally retarded inmates. And as many of you may know, Texas has one of the highest, or the highest, number of executions for criminals. But most oddly, as a choice for Secretary of Energy, when he was running for president, one of the departments that he wanted to eliminate was the Department of Energy. So the very surreal choice for Secretary of Energy. Uh, We might be better off if he does eliminate it, if he's going to be the secretary of it. But just a very odd choice. Again, it'll be interesting to see what happens when he becomes the boss of thousands of people in a department that he doesn't think should exist. Another very sad choice, Betsy DeVos for Secretary of Education. She is and has been for decades an extreme right-wing religious zealot. She's a proponent of school choice, of school vouchers, and her support of school vouchers is firmly rooted and motivated in her Christian faith. The Detroit charter school system, which she helped design, is the biggest school reform disaster in the country. So, again, very strange that Trump would choose a Secretary of Education who is opposed to public education. That is the reason for the Department of Education. It makes no sense, but it seems to be a dead end trying to make sense sometimes of Trump's picks, even of Trump himself. Now, all of these picks, I think, come from the people that Trump has surrounded himself with throughout his campaign, and especially Stephen Bannon, his senior advisor, and Michael Flynn as well, National Security Advisor, although Michael Flynn is a relatively new pick of Trump. But Steve Bannon has been with Trump for some time. Of course, Bannon was the executive chair of Breitbart News, which I suppose he'll be stepping down from, and a founding member also of Breitbart News, a news outlet that calls itself a platform for the alt-right. Whenever you hear alt-right, you should just think racist, misogynist, sexist, homophobic. Alt-right is a nice name they've given to themselves. But this is the person who's whispering in Trump's ear. So it may make some sense that Trump is picking Secretary of Education who doesn't believe in public education, Secretary of Energy who doesn't believe in the Department of Energy. It's up is down and down is up kind of thinking. So Trump has chosen Michael Flynn as his national security advisor. And Michael Flynn as national security advisor should also concern us. He has said before that he thinks Muslim faith is a cancer, that fear of Muslims is rational. He and his son have been proponents of conspiracy theories. And this support of conspiracy theories, I think, even goes to a more fundamental truth as to what the problem is with Trump and his team. And that's the concept of truth. It's a truth, I think, is being purposefully thrown out the window. It's being, for political gain, it's being twisted, and the concept of truth is being trashed. And I think we saw this most clearly from Trump surrogate Scott Neil Hughes. And I just want to read a little bit about what he said concerning truth. He was on the Diane Rem show to discuss the media's role in covering Trump and Trump's administration and Trump's choices. And he basically said that there is no longer such thing as fact. There is no longer truth, no longer fact. And this is exactly what he said. Well, I think it's also an idea of an opinion. And that's, on one hand, I hear half the media saying that these are lies, but on the other half, there are many people that go, no, it's true. And so one thing that has been interesting this entire campaign season to watch is that people that say facts are facts, they're not really facts. Everybody has a way. It's kind of like looking at ratings or looking at a glass of half full water. Everybody has a way of interpreting them to be the truth or not truth. There's no such thing, unfortunately, anymore as facts. One of the things that worries me is that millions of people have seen this, and outside of some reporting, um, and people who concern themselves with such things on a daily basis, there doesn't seem to be too much worry about this. And I cannot, for the life of me, understand why. Here we have a Trump supporter, a surrogate, Trump surrogate, stating explicitly that there are no such things as facts. Now, typically, it's been the right who has accused the left of postmodernism and relativism, but this is clearly an extreme case of what I would call relativistic nihilism. There are no such things as facts. And the scary part about this is if that is your understanding of reality, then you can say anything and you can do anything, and there's nothing preventing you from committing atrocities. I don't want to be a scaremonger, but I do think that with this philosophy of extreme relativistic nihilism, of there being no such thing as facts or truth, this is fundamentally, foundationally what leads to fascism, to fascist governments, to fascist dictatorships. When those in power have the power to dictate and determine what should be believed and what should not be believed. And I think it shows that a large portion of the American population accept this kind of talk and thinking, shows an extreme and a worrying lack of critical thinking. And maybe one of the ways that the school system has failed us is that it seems most people don't have the ability to think critically about what they hear or what they see or read, and to judge it. Judging's not always bad. We should judge some things, and then this is something we should judge. There are facts, there are truths, there is right and there is wrong. It's not always completely black and white, but when you have a candidate or cabinet picks of a candidate saying explicit lies, not opinions, lies, that can be verifiably determined as lies. But no one calling them on this, at least no one outside of the news media calling them on this. And if we just continue to let this go, then we will arrive at a place where a government leader, a government dictator, has the power and the ability to tell us this is true, this is not true, regardless of whether it's actually true. Historical revisionism, Steve Bannon and his crew at Breitbart have been practicing this for years, is a part of this lack of respect for facts and truth. So I just want you to be aware, and not to allow yourself to get so exhausted with the struggle for freedom and the struggle for liberty and the maintenance of democracy that we just allow things like this to pass. So, thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Freedom Matters.